is back.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Baseball Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Welcome into the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves baseball talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Grant McAuley. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase Locked On MLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And of course, our Atlanta Baseball Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up on today's show, we'll talk about how the Braves can be this good with so many setbacks already this season and going deep. And is one ready? We'll talk about it in the stretch. But first, let's talk about how he's gone from minimum free to maximum freed. All right, guys. I'm taking a page right out of Grant's book.
Yes.
All right. The Braves recorded a 5-0 win against the Miami Marlins Tuesday as Max Fried pitched the third Maddox of his career. Man, Grant, I'm going to go with you first. Since you call him maximum freed and you said, hey, he's now truly that guy. How good was it to see him put together such a solid performance last night?
Yeah, it's so encouraging on so many levels because you knew it's in there. Like, you know what he's capable of. And you knew that first handful of starts outside of the one against the Marlins the last time were not anywhere close to the level that he wanted to be and that the Braves need him to be as well. So getting himself back on track, and I think going out there with maybe just more of an edge. I don't know necessarily what it was. I know he said after the game he saw what Bryce Elder did. That got him fired up. And he just wanted to go out there and follow that. And I think, to kind of go back to the Greg Maddux of it all, Maddux, Glavine, Smoltz, which if you talk about Braves pitchers enough, you're going to get back there. These were guys who competed with one another in the healthiest possible way of one-upsmanship. You see your teammate go out there and toss 7 scoreless innings. I want to toss 8 scoreless innings. You struck out 5. I want to strike out 7. Whatever the case is. But the bottom line is the team is the ultimate beneficiary of this because you have these guys going out there and putting in these kind of performances. So great to see. And hopefully that ERA will continue to fall. A complete game shutout in 2024. I don't care who it's against. That's impressive.
That's what I said too as well, Grant. Like Jarvis, when I remember, like I was driving along, I was watching it, I was listening to it last night, and I heard at one point 38 pitches, 28 strikes, and I kept saying and I know it was like really pipe dreams, but I was like, man, if he could go 7, 8, 9, and then it happened. So Jarvis, how good was it to see that and to see Max Fried back to his 2022 runner-up Cy Young form?
It was almost like seeing a unicorn last night, Grant, because we're talking about 34 complete games in 2023 in the entirety of the league, and only 3 other guys have pitched a complete game this year. Ranger Suarez, the Phillies. I don't like him, but I had to mention it. But when you think about what Max Fried, like I said, I don't know what it was either, Grant, but to me, he looked like he just had a command. He was just walking around. He had his chest out, stuck out a little bit on the mound last night, and that was just a beautiful thing to watch. And like you said, T, 37 pitches through 4 innings, 57 pitches through 6 innings. It ended up with a total of 92. That is unheard of, I feel like, in today's game. Like, to let guy go a complete game, go through 9 innings and just absolutely just dominate. I'm talking about ground ball outs. That's why I feel like it was a Maddox too, right? Because getting those guys to put the ball in play, getting those quick innings and not necessarily have to trying to strike out everybody. We get it. We love what Spencer Strider's able to do, but when you're getting the guys to put the ball on the ground like that, that means that's safety. That means more than likely you have a really good infield that can turn those plays around like they did. Their double play to get out in trouble last night with Max. I just feel like overall it was just so good to see, and for him to do it in a complete game fashion. And here we are talking about Greg Maddux. I absolutely love it. The more we talk about Greg Maddux this year in comparison to the pitchers on this pitching staff, sans Spencer Strider, the better.
Yeah.
And that's the good thing. That's having that conversation minus Spencer Strider. And again, with Fried not giving up his first base runner until the top of the third inning, I think that was impressive as well. But hey, maybe he's kind of got the Marlins number because he does have 4 straight wins against the Marlins dating back to May of 2022. So sometimes you just got to get back into your stride against a team that you can absolutely dominate. So now, another pitcher who I won't say surprises, but I'll kind of say pleasantly surprises Jarvis was Bryce Elder. He definitely showed up against the Marlins and might actually make you believe he's ready to come back. He pitched almost 7 innings of shutout ball. So do you think maybe he is the answer to the back of the rotation?
I think so, because we're talking about a guy that put in an all-star performance in the first half of last year. I think that if we don't necessarily have to see that guy in that first half, we kind of see if we more kind of like balance it out, like a blend of the guy in the first half and the second half. I feel like he'll be a guy that you can kind of depend on in the back end of their rotation. You're talking about going 6 2/3 innings. He had 8 hits, but no on runs. Like, that what matters at the end of the day. Guys were putting the ball in play, but a lot of little soft toss ground balls, and he was able to get a big double play ball as well. So those are some of the things that I feel like that you pay attention to as far as as he goes along. And then I feel like he'll be a good candidate to shore up the back of the end of the rotation.
How about you, Grant?
Yeah, no, I think this is exactly what they have been working towards, and it just didn't time out initially with the Spencer Strider injury to get Bryce Elder into the rotation immediately. They were able to go a couple of times through. I thought Darius Vines was adequate, and maybe we'll see him again. And with the way things have gone in the past, we see more than a few pitchers come up and have a role to play, most certainly. But talking to Bryce back in spring training, he really felt like he learned so much, not from the success of his first half in 2023 and making the All-Star team, but what he is taking out of the lessons of the second half and how long a Major League Baseball season is, throwing more innings than at any point in his entire career, professional or amateur, and needing to still be able to go out and get results by the time you're at the back end of that season. And then, of course, you got October. If you play really well, you get to play another month. So all of that factors in, and Bryce Elder wants to be part of that, most certainly. So I feel like he does take a lot out of that from that experience factor. And when he's on, he is working in the margins of the strike zone, just kind of getting hitters to expand a bit, generating a lot of soft contact. Same thing Max Fried did in his start yesterday. So it's some really encouraging things we're seeing in this rotation all of a sudden. Without Spencer Strider, it's going to be a challenge. As we talked about last week, I think nobody you're going to call up from the minor leagues is going to do what Spencer Strider does, but it doesn't mean they can't come up and give you quality starts, give you a chance to win, because with this offense and a very good bullpen, the Braves, it's no surprise that they have the best record in the National League. All the pieces add up, and we still haven't even seen some guys at the plate get hot yet. So great to see the pitching really coming together and stabilizing.
Grant, I think you make a great point, because on the broadcast last night, I think AJ mentioned that he's about replacing Spencer Strider. I think we need to change that verbiage, right? I think it needs to be more so of shoring up the back end of the rotation, because we understand if Max Fried is who he is, like we talked about earlier, he's going to be the ace of this staff. He can replace Spencer Strider, right? I hate to put that in that sense, but when you're talking about performance and what we're used to seeing from him, I feel like he'll be able to step into that role. So I feel like staying away from the whole replacing Spencer Strider, and in comparison to Bryce Elder and whoever they want to throw in at the back end of the rotation, and making sure that we're talking about, like, hey, guys have moved up and stepped up in the rotation, and then we're just trying to fill the back end of that part.
Yeah, and Brian Snitker's talked about this last year when they were going through their pitching problems, and again this year. I've already heard it. It's not about asking Max Fried and Chris Sale and Charlie Morton and Ronaldo Lopez and whoever's in the 5 spot to do more than they're supposed to do because Spencer Strider's out. They just need to concentrate on their performance, and more times than not, these are guys with a track record in the case of a lot of them and potential in the case of the others. So when you've got a Chris Sale in this rotation, I feel like that's an X factor as well. He has led a staff plenty of times over the course of his career. Charlie Morton's been around for a while, has been one of the top pitchers in baseball in the back half of his career, so the experience factor is there. And Ronaldo Lopez, surprise, has looked like the Braves' best starting pitcher in the early going. Can he keep that up? That's one of the questions about him, and I'm sure that'll be a question about Bryce Elder. Can he build on these starts and consistently go to the post every 5th day? Because if they can keep this group healthy, it's still a very, very formidable rotation, even if you don't have Spencer Strider, who, when we talked to him last Friday, said, look, they can win the World Series without me. They don't need me to win the World Series. I'm going to be cheering them on. And if we needed a reminder, what the Braves did in 2021 without maybe the best player on the planet, that should
Indeed.
let you know crazy things can happen if you just get to October and play some good baseball.
Sure.
Indeed. And they're starting to get that run support on a more consistent basis. But Grant, we would be remiss if we go without talking about at least one guy in the bullpen in particular, AJ Minter, who has now set a franchise record for 108 holds. We know that the pen overall has been pretty darn solid, but AJ setting that record, that's pretty impressive.
It is, and I think it speaks to the consistency that he has brought to this bullpen, because I think for the last maybe 3 or 4 years, you can really look at AJ Minter and make an argument that he may have been the Braves' best reliever. I know he's gone through some highs and lows. I mean, he was demoted to the minor leagues during 2021, had to come back, and by the time he was back and reestablished himself in the second half, boom, the night shift is helping pitch the Braves to a World Series championship. 2022, he was outstanding. 2023, there were some valleys, and then there were some peaks again as he was able to refine his form. And I talked to AJ at length about a week and a half ago, and I'm sure y'all will talk about Travis d'Arnaud a little bit as the show goes on. But just the influence that Travis had on AJ to help him get through some of those downtimes, the trust that they have in the catchers as well to help kind of guide them through lineups and dealing with opposing hitters. And the thing that stuck out to me the most was, I don't want to pitch to other people's weaknesses. I want to pitch to my strengths. And I think AJ learning lessons like that, having the stuff he has and getting the results he is one of the reasons why he is, I think, the Braves' most important reliever in a lot of ways. And he's been doing that for a minute.
I like that, Grant, because sometimes you have your MVP for your team, and that's an important person. But I think that MIP, that most important person, is a little bit different than maybe that MVP, but kind of says, hey, in crunch situations, when we need you, you're there. And I think that's a great call for him to be that most important player for the Braves. When we come back, we're going to talk about whether or not these Braves can stay as good as they've been so far with so many setbacks already this season. We'll talk about that in Going Deep. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by Monopoly Go and Prize Picks. Guys, I need you all to listen up for this huge announcement. I've been tracking the leaderboards every day, keeping my eyes on the scores, putting all my heart into it when I play, and I'm super pumped to announce, yay, I'm getting close to the top. Anyway, I'm talking about the hit mobile game Monopoly Go. You probably heard of it because it's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on the classic Monopoly, but you can play this anywhere, anytime. You can explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot, all while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties, charge your friends rent on those properties, or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks. But favorite part is the leaderboards, because you can see who's a tycoon, who's gone bankrupt. So get yourself on the charts. Download Monopoly Go today. It's now free on the App Store and Google Play. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Now, of course, spring training's over. Baseball season is officially underway, so you don't want to miss the chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Travis d'Arnaud, if you're listening, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or home runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. And of course, NBA playoffs is in full swing as well. So you can get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and all of the world's best players take the game to a new level. So download that Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today, the Prize Picks apps. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB, and that's all lowercase letters, for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is picking more, picking less, made easy. Injuries have been all the conversation, Jarvis, for the beginning of this Braves season. Yet they still find themselves sitting in first place in the NL East with a 16-6 record. For you, what's been maybe the biggest reason that the Braves have been able to not just stay afloat, but actually been pretty darn solid in being able to still lead the division?
To be honest with you, I have to start off with Ozone, right? We've had a lot of conversations about him and just what he's been able to do. You talking about a 326 batting average, OPS over 1,000, like all of those things kind of come into play. And then like he got off to a horrible start in the first game, right? And then after that, just went on an absolute tear and started tearing.
Yeah.
And of course, his streak is over with now, but it's just like I said, we've talked about on this show and other show on Atlanta Sports Party as well. It's just how this guy has just been so integral as to been basically carrying this offense, when guys like Matt Olson who've been struggling. But
Yeah.
I think that, we'll talk about him a little bit later, but I just think Marcell Ozuna's been the catalyst. And then I got to go to our guy, Travis Darno, like what Grant mentioned. You talking about 5 home runs
Yeah.
and 8 at-bats as of Monday. Now it's 13 at-bats. He still got an RBI last night.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about that, those are some of the things that, and I haven't even named like the big guys, right?
Right.
Like these are the other guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel like those two have just been just so vital and to be able to carry this team as they figure out the rotation, like we mentioned, and they figure out what's going on with the big 3 guys, right? So I think this is something that it goes back to, I know this may be referred to as the Alex Anthopoulos party, love fest. Y'all can call it what you want to call it, but that's what it is, because the way he's kind of stacked this lineup, it is so hard to kind of look at different parts of the different pieces of this thing and say, hey man, if they lose this guy, it is over for the Braves. And they just haven't been able to do that.
Yeah. And I think when you look at the lineup overall, although, like you said, it was the Ozuna party to start the season, and then Travis d'Arnaud kind of picked up there. I think you can also mention and think about it from the perspective of what the entire team has done, because you're basically talking about 47-19. That's how they've outscored opponents through Tuesday. That is crazy when you think
the
about
league
it.
too.
And
Yeah.
right. And you think about the fact that you're talking about the last 2 games being shutouts. That's really impressive to me. But also I want to talk about the fact that when you look back to 2023, this is the Braves basically doing it all over again. They're leading an average across the majors with 283, OBP of 353, slugging average of 475, OPS of 828. Those are crazy numbers for the Braves to start off with when you consider the guys that we're going to talk about who haven't even hit their stride, Ronald Acuna Jr. and company. But I think also looking at the other side of what Travis d'Arnaud has been able to do, we talked about the fact that AJ Minter acknowledged how much he helped him. You saw what Travis d'Arnaud was able to do last night. And Max Fried talked about how important it is to have Travis d'Arnaud catching. And this is a conversation. Remember, 3 weeks ago, it felt like the bottom was falling out when Sean Murphy went down, right? And we're looking at potentially another 3 weeks before he returns to the lineup, because he just now started doing catching drills.
Take
You
your
don't have to
time,
worry about
Sean.
that. Exactly. You don't have to worry about that. You just do you, Sean
get better.
Murphy,
Yeah.
get better, and the Braves will be just fine. Because again, you're talking about Travis d'Arnaud not just doing the things that he's done, like the 3-run home run last Friday against the Rangers, but you're talking about how he's really able to be that guy who leads his pitchers to do what we've seen, like what we were talking about earlier. And don't forget, Chadwick Trump is pretty much holding his own as well. So I think that you could talk about the catchers remaining a strength for the Braves in spite of losing Murphy. But also, we talked about this earlier, Jarvis. What about that bullpen? The bullpen is doing some serious work as well. And I think it is one of those kind of low-key strengths of this Braves team so far this season.
Yeah, you gotta start with Marcell Ozuna, right? Like he's been the guy. Although some guys get on base and be like, all right, Marcell, all right, we need you to go to church. It's time to go to church now. Just and ask for forgiveness so we can go and get this save and get on up out of here. So yeah, I think he's been an integral part of it as well. Like and that's what Alex Anthopoulos values, right? He talked about how he wants to have as many arms as possible in the bullpen, and for you to be able to go out and do that and get guys that that understand what the the importance of that, right? And I think you even talk about with Travis d'Arnaud. I thought he said something interesting as well. He was talking about when he came in to this team in 2020. One of the reasons why he wanted to come here was because of Sal Fasano, the catching coach, and how they just go through game plans, and how Sean Murphy has been a part of that as well. Even with him being out and injured and not being a part of the game, he's still part of the process, right? And I think that, Travis d'Arnaud talked about that's one of the reasons he came here, and it just makes so much sense, right? When guys go down, you still have guys who are more than capable of coming in and being productive, and I think that's just a speaks to the organization as a whole, and it's kind of bleeding on down, right?
Yeah. And if you throw out the 3 games against the Mets, the Braves relievers, a 1.73 ERA, allowing just 11 earned runs in 57 innings. Pretty darn impressive. It'll get you a top 10 ranking of bullpens across the majors when you do things like that. And you have to talk about this pitching staff as well. I know that we kind of touched on it earlier, but you're right in that you don't replace Spencer Strider. You just reset with Spencer Strider out. And I think everybody has done their part in resetting in a different way. Max Fried's reset came last night, right? And it was in remarkable fashion. And you could talk about what Chris Sale was able to do. Team highs of 24 and 2/3 innings, 27 strikeouts. That's absolutely crazy to think, because you didn't know kind of what you were getting from him. And then Uncle Charlie started off where we were a little bit shaky. We weren't quite sure which Charlie Morton we were going to get, but then he's rounded out into form. And I think maybe the most impressive, other than what Bryce Elder was able to do last night and Darius Vines did in one of his starts, is Ronaldo Lopez. Ronaldo Lopez has been sensational, to say the least. I mean, hadn't been a starter in 3 seasons, 3 years, but he's been pitching like an ace. 0.5 ERA, lowest in the majors amongst pitchers with 3 or more starts. Pretty darn.
And he was one of those guys where we kind of figure out, okay, are they going to use him in the bullpen? You know, using the starting pitching. Then we heard, and you looked at the contract. I was like, all right, 30 million, 3 years. All right, that's 10 million a year. You could pay that to a bullpen guy, but no. Alex and Thomas said, hey, we're going to stretch this guy out in the spring, and he's going to go back to being a starting pitcher, which he hadn't done in a couple of years. So for them to have that eyeball again, Alex's eye, saying, "Hey, I want to put this guy, in our rotation and see where it goes from there. And if it doesn't work out, hey, we can bump it back into the bullpen and make it even stronger than what it already is." So for him to be the most consistent pitcher to start off the season, nobody saw that coming.
And speaking of consistent, there's been a little bit of an inconsistent performance at the plate from some of the Braves' obvious players, including the MVP. But the Braves just roll on. We're going to talk about how they've been able to do it and whether or not we should be concerned when we come back for the stretch. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by DoorDash. So you want to make mom smile? Well, you can start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brand she loves. But the most important thing is that you can get it delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Now, moms, they really are a gift, and gifts are thoughtful to give to them. But when you have the opportunity to select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech to self-care essentials and more delivered right to her door, I think that's going to be pretty impressive for her. Now, if she has a sweet tooth, she's a beauty connoisseur, all of it. It doesn't matter because DoorDash can get it done. Now, you can get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB. You can order using DoorDash even today. Why wait for Mother's Day? Go ahead and order from DoorDash today. Now, if you want to get that Mother's Day gift, as unique as your mom is, you can still use that code LOCKEDONMLB to get 50% off your next order and up to $15 when you spend $15+ on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now at DoorDash. So order using DoorDash today. Terms do apply. All right, Jarvis. So somehow, miraculously, the Braves just keep rolling, and you kind of wonder how it is. And I don't know that you really think about it a lot because what is the conversation we're having? We're having this conversation about Travis d'Arnaud and the excellent start to the season that he's had. You mentioned Marcell Ozuna and the excellent start that he's had to the season. And granted, Ronald Acuna Jr. has done his thing as far as his stolen bases. He's now up to 10 stolen bases. So on that side, he's good, but we haven't seen him hit a home run quite yet. And his OPS is around 791, not to mention Matt Olson having a really, really rough start to the season. And also Austin Riley having a tough start to the season as well. But yet, these Braves somehow, some way are still very much in the mix and at the top of the division. But are you concerned through 22 games about these guys? And if so, which one maybe are you the most concerned about?
I think it's gonna have to be Matt Olson because
Yeah,
yeah, I
those
mentioned
numbers.
gosh, he's
Yeah.
had one hit in
1
his
for
last 8
21.
games.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good. And then when you think about him batting in the cleanup, and that's the most important, spot when you're talking about bringing guys like Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzy Albies when he gets back, and then Austin Riley having those guys. You have to be able to pick those guys up, and not necessarily Ozzy Albies, excuse me, but just when being in that fourth slot just lets you know that that's the guy that's going to bring in those runs, and he just hasn't been able to do that. So I think that's my biggest concern because you're talking about a guy who's coming off of a season with 54 home runs, 139 RBI. Those are some of the things that you look for and expect from him.
Yes.
We talk about the quiet superstar, right? The quiet
Mhm.
star, like he's that type of guy. So I think he's my biggest concern.
Yeah.
I'm not too concerned about Ronald Acuna Jr. because he's still going to be productive, like you said, with the stolen bases and being able to get on base so people can drive him in.
Yep.
But Matt Olson, that's the one that you talking about your cleanup hitter struggling like this, like that's where I can start to get a little concerned.
Yeah, I would agree. And when I look at Austin Riley, I mean, he's at least getting on base. He's getting hits, and that's pretty positive. That's pretty encouraging. So I'm not as much worried about him because when I see 1 for 21, I think that's what concerns me the most because like you said, when you're in that cleanup spot and Ronald Acuna Jr. is getting on base and doing what he's supposed to do, and like you said, when Ozzy Albies comes back, he'll be doing what he's supposed to do. But you're looking down the list, you're looking down the batting order and you're saying, okay, Matt Olson, okay,
Yeah.
Matt Olson, okay, Matt Olson, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
That's when it gets to be a little bit scary. Or when you're looking at runners in scoring position, then it's like, okay, if we're always hearing that runners are left stranded on the base, and we're always hearing it because the guy in the 4 hole isn't doing his job, that's a challenge. And so, Austin Riley, like I said, not too worried about him because he's kind of at least being consistent in making contact with the ball. And I think that's good. And whenever the order kind of shifts a little bit, maybe when Michael Harris II is up in that 2 hole, I think that you do just fine. But again, that goes back to a guy that's getting on base, but we're not getting the guy to drive him in like we need to. And also like we saw last year. But I think one thing about the Braves, typically speaking, when things like this happen, they're going to address the issue and address the issue early. So I'm not too concerned about it, but it does give me a little bit of pause because it makes me kind of wonder what's going on with him. But to end on a positive note, we've got good news about Ozzy Albies. You don't have to worry about what's going on with him because Brian Snicker kind of gave us a little insight about where he is. Of course, Ozzy took full batting practice Monday and Tuesday. No residual effects from that broken toe. So Snit said he thinks Ozzy will be ready to play Friday. And of course, that's when he's eligible to come off the IL. So he also said, hey, we'll see. So I think in that case, I kind of like that because we kind of know why Snit is able to say, we'll see. We'll kind of take it slow. But are you excited or are you at least encouraged that Ozzy's on his way back?
Absolutely. When you think about what he brings to the table, and if you just looking, I was able to catch the video of him, taking batting practice, he just has this big old smile on his face. And that just lets you know that how much he wants to get back.
Sure.
And we were talking about, one of the utility players for the Atlanta Braves before we got started with Grant. And he was one. It was funny that he was one of the guys that's played with the Phillies when Bryce Harper had his MVP season. Obviously played with the Braves. With the Dodgers, excuse me.
Yeah.
And the superstar lineup that they have. And he was just saying how the Braves just do things different. And that comes to just playing every day, meaning those guys being in the lineup every day. 159 games, 160 games played. That's not out of the norm for as far as the Braves go as an organization. And that's why I feel like Snit may have a little pause, because once he brings Ozzy back, he wants to be able to put him in that lineup every day, because that's how he rolls and that's how he does things. And I think until he's completely ready to go, and not necessarily, hey, I can go, but I might be able to push it. And I don't think that he's going to put him out there. But I think if he's saying, hey, I can go and I'm ready to go every day, that's when he'll be ready. And I think that's what he's waiting on, or to hear from Ozzy.
Right. And I think to have Luis Guillorme and David Fletcher cover second base pretty well during Ozzy's absence, that also gives Snit the opportunity to say, hey, Ozzy, not until you're ready. You don't have to rush back. And granted, he was having a pretty solid season before he left. 2 home runs, 14 RBI, a 317 average. But again, this is the luxury of having the kind of depth that the Braves have. You don't have to rush anybody back, which is really, really great to see. And, another thing, you mentioned Luke Williams talking about the fact that things are just different when it comes to the Braves. I look at the Braves clubhouse, and there's this little handshake that they do now. It's like a little, I don't want to go too much because my hands look huge, but the little, you'll see this, but then you'll see this.
Together. Yeah.
And it's so right. And it stands for together. And I think that is such a cool thing. And I think that's very indicative of the connectivity between and amongst the players in this clubhouse.
Absolutely. And and that's one of the reasons why I feel like not everyone, but a lot of teams in Major League Baseball are envious of what the Braves have going on, because of, hey, they were able to sign their guys, sign contracts early. Can we do that? Probably not. It's just the trust that these players have to be able to sign those contracts, because we understand what it is. A lot of these guys are in it for, hey, I want to get as much money as I can, and I'm not going to doggone sign that contract, because we know those Scott Boras players, those guys ain't signing those contracts.
Right.
So I think that's one of the reasons why I feel like you have to be able to build a certain type of culture in order for guys to buy in, and that goes with that filter process, right? We talk about the on Atlanta Football Party with the draft coming up. Then Terry Fontenot was talking about that filter, or being able to bring certain guys that are for us. And I think Alex Anthopoulos has, oh my God, he has set a standard that Major League Baseball is going to be hard to follow. And if they try to do it, they're going to have to really dig in deep. And I think Alex Anthopoulos has completed that to the T. And that's why you have guys like Luke Williams coming in and saying, this is different, and they can't even put it into words for the most part. So I really feel like that's the thing that, the Braves have established. And I love being a part of it, growing up in this city and seeing it. It is a wonderful sight to see. Let's just finish it off in October, though.
Yeah, I think that's the critical part. Yeah, because we talked about how the Braves have been so successful this season and what they put together with a 16-6 record, despite players being down like Ozzy Albies and Sean Murphy, despite players not being up like Ronald Acuna Jr. and Austin Riley, but up, down, best record in the NL East. All of it matters in the end. But the real thing that matters is bringing home that World Series win. So thanks for stopping by the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves talk. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we're free and available wherever you download your podcast. And don't forget to check us out on the Atlanta Sports Party Thursday.